and welcome to episode 2 of Killer Conversations. My name is Steven, and I am joined today by my lovely wife, Sean.
Hello and welcome back. We're so excited you came back for episode 2. Kids are in bed. We hope. I am all natural today. No makeup. Hair's a mess. So don't come for me in the comments. I know. I know.
I always look like this. Makeup's not going to help anything.
So tonight, Stephen, I thought maybe before we get into the episode, we would let them get to know us a little bit and maybe talk about our favorite creators.
Well, if you want me to talk about my favorite creators, it's going to be a lot different than yours because I'm what you call, what's the technical term? Yeah, I'd say probably a nerd. I'm a big fan of like Linus Tech Tips and Jay's 2 Cents, the Toasty Bros, different tech channels like that. But I am also a huge sports nerd. I love Tennessee football. I love On 3, PFF. If you want to talk football or electronics, I am here for you. Now, honey, I know yours is going to be a completely different answer than mine, and you probably don't even know half the words I just said, but
I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's what I thought. Go ahead and tell us who your favorite creators are.
Talk nerdy to me.
I can do that.
So right now I've been really into watching, her name's Mama Cookie. I think her real name's Christine. She's on a weight loss journey like I am and very inspiring. I love the dad chats, mom chats. They crack me up. Dylan and Suzanne. After their one video, she is always just going to be Suzanne to me. For the true crime, I like Stephanie Harlow. I watch Rotten Mango, which they do a lot of international cases, which I love. And Mackenzie Foltz, she does the PI stories. Freedom Barbie, I think is what she goes by. Love her. I try to learn how to do makeup from her. It's not working. I'm hopeless, I think. I'm a hopeless case.
Well, you said, the true crime. Does Adam Sandler and Jennifer Aniston in Murder Mystery count as that? Because if so,
it does not.
Huge fan.
No, that does not.
Well, I tried.
All right. Well, yes.
Well, how about you tell me what we're going to talk about tonight? Because I have no idea. If you missed episode 1, I don't know anything about what she's about to tell me. I'm not into the murder mystery stuff, the true crime. I don't listen to the a little. But I don't listen to any of those podcasts. I don't watch the news a lot. So most of the stuff we're going to talk about, I'm coming in not knowing anything. So go ahead and tell me what we're going to talk about.
Okay, so where do you have a guess of where we may be heading tonight?
Well, we did New Orleans.
Well, yeah.
And I did not say it right. Apologize right away. I ain't going to say a lot of words right. I can't even talk to like AI machines. They miss everything I say. So I apologize. But that's where we were last night. I'm going to say we're going to stay there.
You think we're going to stay in New Orleans?
You hinted at that you had more than one case in that area. So I'm going to say that's where we're going to stay.
And you would be wrong. So wrong.
Story of my life. You tell me that at least 7 times a day. So
this is true. So I'm taking you somewhere a little different tonight. I'm taking you to Scotland.
Hey, Ancestry.com says that's where, my ancestors came from. Most of them.
Dear Lord.
30-something%.
Okay, well, I am taking you to Scotland, but it's not that postcard Scotland. It's not the rolling green hills and the tartan scarves, that cozy little pub. No, we're not going there. No. We're going to an island on the raw edge of the North Atlantic Ocean. I know you love that. An island, water.
No, I'll just go ahead and tell the audience I can't swim. I don't like water. You'll never see me on a boat. I've seen Titanic. I know what happens out in the ocean.
You do realize that if you can't swim, the boats are probably a good idea.
Yeah, that's what they thought about the Titanic. Unsinkable. Where's it at? Bottom of the ocean.
Oh, dear Lord. Okay. Well, like I said, we're going to the edge of the North Atlantic, and this is a place where the ocean never truly rests, where the wind can scream past 150 miles an hour, and where the horizon feels like it's just holding its breath. Out there, battered by storms and swallowed by fog, it's a lonely scrap of land called Eileen Moor. People whisper that pre-Christian rituals took place there, so probably maybe a little haunted. And when you step out on the rock, if you ever dare to, you can almost feel the presence of those that came long before we did. On this island, all that sits there is a tiny chapel and the Flannan Isle Lighthouse, a tower built to conquer the darkness, a beacon meant to keep sailors safe. And yet tonight we're not talking about the chapel. We're not talking about the lighthouse itself. We're talking about 3 men who vanished from it. And so just so you know, 3 men who vanished from an island. They had no ship. They had nothing. They were there alone.
And you're just giving me another reason to never go to an island. So now you're telling me you can disappear without even having to be on a boat on the ocean.
Land. They were firm ground, land.
Then tsunamis happen.
Well, maybe. So their names were James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur. 3 keepers who lived and worked on Eileen Moor until one day they just simply didn't. Their disappearance, it's haunted the island ever since. The lighthouse itself was practically brand new. It was built in 1899. It was, lighthouses back then were a big part of, like the
They were
ship.
extremely important. They literally
extremely important. Yes.
Yeah, they kept the ships from floating into an actual island and causing it to crash. Because especially in Scotland, it's a very foggy area, so they were extremely important.
No, yeah, they were extremely, extremely important, and they weren't, automated like they are now. People actually had to be present at all times, 24/7. They had to be there to man these lighthouses, and this particular one took 3 people at all times around the clock. And honestly, I don't imagine people lined up for this job. I mean, it's on an island. There's nothing there. It was when you were on shift, it was these 3 men, and that was it. That was it. And we're talking about sheer cliffs that drop straight into the ocean, storms that can peel the skin off your face. And that part of the ocean, it's waves that hit with the force of like a freight train. So, I mean, doesn't sound like a good time to me. It just doesn't.
Yeah, no, me either. I'll pass on all of that.
And these men, they weren't just coworkers. They were everything to each other for weeks at a time. So, it was survival. And it was only 3 of them. No neighbors, no visitors, no nothing. Just the ocean, the lighthouse, and them. So I came across this quote in my research, and it makes total sense. It says, if you couldn't drink with them, you couldn't work with them. So, basically they had to be able to get along. You don't want to be out there with people you can't, get along with. That would be horrible. So you lived together, you worked together, you endured the elements together. It was just you 3. Okay, so on December 15th, 1900, the steamer Arctur Archer, and I could be saying this wrong, and I'm sorry if I butcher these names as usual. But it passed by the Flannan Isles, and it noticed that something that should never ever happen. The lighthouse was dark. This is, as you know, a huge no-no. Like, it should never, ever, ever be dark. I mean, it wasn't just a light, it was survival. Ships depended on this. Lives depended on it. So when they noticed that it was dark, it was a massive red flag. But strangely, nothing happened right away. It wasn't until 3 days later, on December 18th, that the outage was finally reported to the Northern Lighthouse Board. And even then, the weather refused to cooperate, so a storm had rolled in, making it impossible to send anybody out to check. So the lighthouse remained dark and the island remained silent, and it wasn't until December 26th, 11 days after the first light went out, that a relief vessel, the Hesperus, was finally able to make the journey to Eileen Moore. So 11 days later. What they found when they arrived, it's one of the biggest mysteries in maritime history. When the Hesperus finally arrived to Eileen Moore, the crew expected to see three men standing on the landing ready, for their rotation home. Because when your relief comes, you're ready to get out of there. You've been there long enough.
Oh, yeah, especially in an area where there's nothing else to do. You would be ready to go home as soon as that boat showed up.
Yeah, you want out of there. But this time, nothing. There was nothing. No figures on the cliff, no keepers waiting at the dock, no movement at all. Nothing. They signaled the lighthouse again and again, but nothing. Just the wind. There was absolutely nothing. When the crew finally made it ashore, the island felt wrong. It just felt too quiet, too empty. You could just tell something was wrong. The entrance gate was closed, which was definitely abnormal, but everything past that looked like it had just frozen time. Inside the lighthouse, the beds were still unmade, as if the men had just gotten up suddenly. The clocks had stopped, and the kitchen table was set, but the food was untouched. So it was like, they were getting ready in normal everyday morning, but something had to have happened. So one of the most unsettling details is, like, in this weather, you're gonna have what they called oilskins at the time, but it's a coat, like a raincoat nowadays. Heavy, weatherproof coat. These men are not gonna leave the lighthouse without these. I mean, in the type of weather that they had there, you needed these.
Yeah, they knew better than to not wear them.
So there should have been 3 coats there, but there was only 1 left. So if 3 men disappeared, only 2 went outside with their jackets on, with their coats on. And this is, where if a storm comes, it could kill you in minutes. So nobody would ever step outside without one. So that means that 1 person left in a hurry. Something happened, 1 person left in a hurry. The single oilskin left hanging by the door told its own story. 2 of the men had walked out into the brutal weather properly dressed, and 1 had rushed out without any coat at all. Whatever pulled them outside, it happened fast, and too fast for all 3 to prepare. So, as you know, like, there's always a logbook, and usually it's wrote in every single night. But the logbook offered nothing. There were rumors that there were, like, ominous lines, that strange cryptic warnings were wrote in it, but this came later. It was just rumors. It was for dramatic effect. The last entry was December 13th, and it was completely ordinary. Routine weather observations, standard duties, nothing out of the ordinary. So, you what could have happened? I mean, I can only imagine the dread that was settling over these people that had came to relieve the 3 lighthouse workers.
Mhm.
Everything just seemed frozen in time.
Yeah, because I mean, 3 people just disappeared, and you gotta wonder, did maybe 2 of them go out and it was a storm, and maybe the storm tucked 2 of them away and the 3rd tried to go and save them, or, what happened? I mean,
Yeah. So, one thing that we need to definitely remember is that these were 3 real people. Fathers, husbands, sons. Each of them had a life waiting back on the mainland. They weren't just fictional characters, they were real.
yeah,
So
families that don't know what happened
right,
to their loved ones, and they probably never figured out what happened to them.
correct, yeah, yeah, so let me just pause for a minute right here to tell you about the 3 men. James Ducat was the principal keeper. He was steady, he was experienced, a man who knew the seas better than most, and he carried the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. So, very responsible, very well recommended. He was, your take charge, your commander in charge, he was it. Thomas Marshall, he was the second assistant. He was younger, but he was dedicated. He took meticulous notes, followed procedures to the letter, and was known for being, cautious, almost to a fault. If it was supposed to be done a certain way, Thomas was gonna make sure it was done that specific way. And then there was Donald MacArthur. He was an occasional keeper. He only filled in if a colleague was sick, and it just so happened that this time, this rotation, there was a sick colleague, so he filled in for this time. He was a tough, no-nonsense man with a reputation for being fiery, but loyal. He was very loyal. I did see that he was a veteran, so he had been to war, and he wasn't even supposed to be there, but it was just a temporary assignment for him. But they all had families waiting on them, and they all had, people expecting them home for the holidays. You gotta think this was right there at Christmas time. So, and they were just gone, just vanished. So, Eileen Moore, the island didn't just swallow these men up. What happened?
And it's probably a question we'll never get an answer to because, you said it was in the 1900s. If it's not been answered by now, it's not going to get answered. So we can just sit here and, kind of guess or give our opinions on what we think happened. And like I said, the weather was really bad and 2 went out in it and the other went to try to save them, but in saying that, it sounds like all 3 of them were very experienced, like they would know.
Very in it. In my research, I did come across that several times that, these men were very experienced. They didn't just put new keepers out at this specific lighthouse. So, you know, definitely experienced. And they knew what they were doing. Superintendent Robert Muirhead was sent to uncover what happened. He was to lead the investigation. And the moment he stepped onto the island, he went straight for the west landing. The most exposed, most dangerous part of Eileen Moore. What he found there was pure chaos, not the kind of caused by neglect or carelessness, but like raw, violent force. Chunks of the turf, like the ground, had been ripped clean off the top of the cliffs. But here's the thing, these cliffs towered 200 feet above sea level.
Wow.
So this is 200 feet above the ocean, and just raw chunks, just huge chunks are took out of it. Ropes and equipment were scattered everywhere, tangled like something had yanked them loose. Some pieces were missing entirely, as if they'd been torn away. And there was a storage box that sat 110 feet above the waterline. And it should have been far beyond the reach of even the most, violent waves. But it had been smashed open, like splintered apart, as if it was struck by like extreme force. So whatever happened here, it wasn't just ordinary weather. It wasn't routine wear and tear. It was destruction, a violent, terrifying destruction. And it raised a lot of questions. What kind of force could do that and take 3 men with it?
Yeah, and not also take the lighthouse down while it's throwing literally
Mhm.
pieces of the island around like it's nothing.
Yeah. 200 feet above sea level, and you have chunks of ground took out?
That's insane.
Like, what
Yep.
does that?
We're never going to an island.
Well, just cross that off our list, huh?
It was never on the list, but now it's double crossed off of it.
Oh, great. Great. Glad I told you this story. So happy.
Yeah.
Okay, so to Muirhead, the scene was painted a clear picture. To him, it was the men must have gone down to the West Landing to secure equipment during the storm, and a massive wave swept them into the ocean. And it made sense. A practical sort of explanation. But there were questions. And there was a huge, huge problem. Weather records show that there were no storms during that time. No towering waves, no violent winds, nothing that should have ripped turf off cliffs 200 feet above sea level, or smashed crates 110 feet above sea level.
Ooh,
It
that's odd.
shows the weather was calm. Up until what was it, December 13th?
Yeah.
Everything was calm.
Wow.
So, and in his explanation of his perfectly painted picture, you're telling me there was a wave 200 feet tall?
I don't see how that could happen. Like, to me, I think that would cause more damage, and the weather report would show it. Like, you would,
Yeah.
they should know if that happened or not.
Yeah. So, right, if you have a rogue wave that's 200 feet tall, that's gonna take that, be that destructive, I
Mhm.
would think that it would show up somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, somebody's gotta notice it. Ships out there, like, it's coming from somewhere.
I think it would do more damage than what it did too.
Right. Yeah.
I think it would've tuck, like you said, the storage chest was just, like, slammed on the ground. I think it would, like, take it into the ocean.
Right. Yeah, just I don't know, like, my head keeps going back to everything reports that it was calm, but you're saying this rogue wave hit and took everybody out.
Yeah, it just
That
seems odd.
that doesn't say calm to me. That doesn't like, there's gonna be some kind of blip somewhere. Like, that's not calm to me. you know? So there's theories, we've learned there's always theories. The most widely accepted one is the rogue wave. So let's just paint a picture here. Imagine three keepers inside a lighthouse. One morning, just about to sit down for breakfast. Maybe they're laughing, swapping stories. Maybe they're quiet, thinking about home. Either way, something catches their eye, something impossible to ignore. A wall of water on the horizon. Thomas Marshall was still carrying the guilt of like an earlier punishment. Um, he had got in trouble for losing equipment, having damaged equipment prior to this. So we already know that he follows things to the letter. He's going to be the first to react, right? He doesn't want this on his record again. So he grabs his coat. He bolts towards the west landing to secure the gear before the storm hits. James Ducat, he's, the responsible one. He feels responsible for Thomas. So he's going to go and following to help. Well, there's the two. There's the two jackets, the two coats that were going. But it's a protocol that somebody has to stay in the lighthouse at all times. So Ducat, maybe he orders MacArthur to stay inside the lighthouse. And he heads out, to help Thomas. And then the wave. So a monster 200-foot high wave that produces no blip in the radar, no nothing, slams into the island with this, I can't even imagine the force that a 200-foot wave would slam into it with. But it knocks both men off their feet, maybe sweeping them towards the edge of the cliff. And back in the lighthouse, MacArthur sees this, so he runs out without, his coat. He rushes out to try to help because we know he was a veteran, so maybe, he has that sense of, that hero, like, I have to save them. They're my friends. I have to save them.
It's either I save them or they're going to die.
Right, right. So to me, he seems, like the protector of the group. He's gonna run out to save them. He's not gonna be the type that just sits there and watches. So, and then maybe in his haste to help to save them, maybe he gets swept off the rock too. All three go. It's dramatic, and it's the theory that most people cling to. But the one thing I keep coming back to on that is still the weather reports.
Yeah, the weather reports, and you're gonna, I mean, say they notice this giant wave coming towards the island or a storm. If the storm was that bad, they're just getting breakfast ready like it's a normal day. They're not, panicking or nothing, or they see this huge wave coming at them, and the first thought is, I understand they don't want to lose the equipment, but if you see a wave that is literally as tall as the lighthouse you're in, the first thing that would pop in my mind is bar the door. We need to, hunker down and
Right, yeah.
yeah, like the
So
equipment would be the last thing I would.
yeah, so I know that Thomas had been in trouble before. And of course, he's gonna want to try to save it. But I would think, it's just my opinion, but I would think that if you saw, like you said, that this massive wave, this 200-foot wave, rogue wave coming at you, I mean, I'm sorry, but for lack of better words, to hell with that equipment. Like you said, hunker down. This thing's fixing to take us out.
Yeah.
That would be, I think, with the cat being responsible, I think that would be his order is, we have to hunker down and bar the door, whatever you got to do, but to keep us all safe.
Yeah.
But because I can't get over that, that didn't even make a blip in the weather report.
Yeah.
So,
Was there any more theories out there?
yeah. Yeah, so there's another theory. And it's called the chain reaction theory. Same setup as before, but without the dramatic towering rogue wave. So let's say maybe a rope snaps loose, or maybe the storage box shifts unexpectedly. Maybe something down at the West Landing suddenly jerks free with enough force to drag Thomas Marshall towards the edge of the cliff. He's out there first. He's trying to secure it. Maybe, something happens, an accident. And he grabs a hold. He's hanging on for life. James the cat, of course, is going to see what's happening. He drops to the ground to help his second. He's not going to let him go. He's going to try to save him. Maybe MacArthur sees this happening. Maybe he sees that they're both fixing to go over, and he runs out to help. Maybe just as he gets there to try to help pull him back up, all three go over the edge. Just, like a chain reaction. But so here's my thought on that. Like I said, it's just my opinion, is if there's food still on the table. So they were, in the middle of cooking, eating, waking up, their beds weren't made. And I think their beds being unmade, I think that's a big clue, because back then, and I know even like my dad's not that old, but it was the first thing you do when you wake up is make your bed.
Well, you also said one of them was a veteran.
Right.
A lot of people that's, been in the military, that's something they always do because
Right.
they're just it's, repetition from where they were in the military and done it. So it is kind of weird that, at least he didn't make his bed. And the fact that they were eating, something had to have happened to cause a panic.
Yeah, so what happened? So you've got calm seas, it's not a storm, not a wave. What happened that they had to go out to fix or to secure the equipment right that minute? What so urgent that happened that it had to be done right then?
If they were even out there securing the equipment to begin with.
Yeah. Yep. So, that's another theory. And we do have one more theory that it's not as widely talked about, but it is out there. It is in the top 3. So, and it's murder-suicide theory. So MacArthur, in some reports, people have mentioned that he had some mental health issues going on. And probably, understandable, but that he was short-tempered. He was, and people think that maybe the isolation and just, storms and the weather's not great, and it's, all of it just kind of set him off. And maybe he killed the other 2 and threw himself into the ocean as well. But here's the thing with that one, is there's no evidence of violence. There's no evidence like in the lighthouse, everything is perfectly in place.
And it doesn't explain the tore up
No,
ground, the broken storage
no,
box, and why was 2 of the, the jackets gone and
right,
1 not? Like, it just there's too many questions that aren't answered in that one.
right. So, and everything it was described, that everything was kind of calm, almost peaceful. So it just doesn't make sense. And to me, in all the research that I've done and all that I read about him, he was more of a protector. I understand, being short tempered and stuff, but to me, he seemed more of the type that would protect you, not hurt you. So it doesn't, no one theory fits.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where we're never going to know the actual answer to what happened.
Yeah, every theory has holes. Every explanation leaves something unanswered. No bodies, no witnesses, no real evidence. Just three men who vanished into thin air. So,
It's tragic because, that's three families that were left without fathers, no answers, like you said, right at Christmas time. And, it's never going to be answered what happened to them.
yeah, it's just really, really sad. Um, and I hate these kind of stories because there is no answer and there's no big enough clue that leads you in one direction or another. And it's those,
But it is one of those, things that's it's gonna make you think and try to come up with
yeah,
theories, and everybody will come up with their own opinion on what they believe actually happened. But it is one of those cases where you're not really left with many answers, but you got a lot of questions that
I like answers though. I want to clean it up and put it in a pretty little box and say, this is what happened. But can you imagine? I mean, like, they thought that island was haunted before. Just saying.
well, I'm not going to it no matter what. So haunt it, not haunt it.
You're just never grateful. I took you to Scotland and you're not appreciative.
If we go to Scotland, that's not the part we're going to.
Well, you're no fun at all.
Yeah, you knew that when you married me.
Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed the story this evening, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to leave us a comment. I mean, have you heard other theories? If you have, please let us know. Or any comments, just anything. If you wanted to talk about, we're here.
Yeah, like she was saying, we're just starting out at this YouTube journey, and we really do appreciate every like that we get and every person that subscribes to us. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask, whether it be about what we talked about today, what you want to talk about in the future, or do what we did earlier. Let us know, who's your favorite creators, what's your
Yeah.
favorite subjects. We'll talk about anything. Like I said, I'll talk sports. I don't care what sport it is with you.
Talk nerdy with him. Please talk nerdy with him.
Yeah, you want to talk technology, go right ahead. Go ahead and put your comment down below. We really do appreciate it.
And we can't wait to see you next time. Bye.
See you for episode 3.